Under pressure from Pope Innocent VI, the English, French and Bretons negotiated a peace, while both factions maintained an uneasy balance of power within the duchy. It was during this period that the Combat of the 30 took place, a famous episode in medieval chivalry. Conflicts between the French and English strongholds of Josselin and Ploermel were resolved in a duel between 30 Montfortist knights led by Robert Bemborough and 30 supporters of Charles de Blois led by Jean de Beaumanoir. The combat took place midway between the two towns on the 26th of March 1351. By nightfall, the Anglo-Breton Montfortists had lost 9 dead against 6 of the pro-French knights. The surviving Montfortists were forced to surrender. Though renowned at the time and later highly romanticised, the combat had no effect on the outcome of the war. Edward III signed the Treaty of Westminster on the 1st of March 1353, accepting Charles of Blois as Duke of Brittany, if the latter undertook to pay a ransom of 300,000 crowns, and that Brittany signed a treaty of alliance in perpetuity with England. This alliance to be sealed by the marriage of the Montfortist claimant John of Montfort, son of the earlier John of Montfort, with Edward's daughter Mary. The marriage required the approval of the King of France and a papal dispensation. Charles de la Cerda, the Constable of France, negotiated the deal, but Charles II of Navarre, who needed continuing war between England and France to maintain his own power, decided to intervene by assassinating the Constable. He then switched his support to France in exchange for territory. The treaty was negated, but Charles of Blois had been freed and returned to Brittany as Duke. The situation remained in stalemate for some time, with Charles of Blois as de facto Duke, but with significant territory still controlled by the Montfortists. Outside events again began to have an effect on the conflict. A plague struck France, and the king himself was captured by the English at the Battle of Poitiers in 1356. The French state was virtually paralysed. In 1362, when the younger John de Montfort reached 22 years of age, King Edward permitted him to return to Brittany. His return was conditioned by a covenant. The covenant not to marry without permission, given in pledge of several fortresses. On arrival, John attempted to reach agreement with Charles of Blois to make peace and share Brittany, but Charles' wife Joan urged him to resist and to crush John. The war resumed in 1363 when Charles de Blois, assisted by Bertrand de Guesclin, had some successes, but when Bertrand left to take control of strongholds in Navarre and Normandy, Charles' advance halted at the unsuccessful siege of Becquerel. Another opportunity to negotiate an agreement arose, but again Joan blocked negotiations. John de Montfort moved to besiege Auray with renowned English warlord John Chandos. Charles of Blois and Bertrand de Guesclin came to the rescue of the besieged city. Montfort, with the assistance of John Chandos, came to attack Auray, which had been in the hands of the Franco-Bretons since 1342. He entered the town of Auray and besieged the castle, which was blockaded by sea by the ships of Nicolas Bouchard coming from La Croisic. Without food supplies, the besieged agreed to surrender the place, if help did not arrive before Michaelmas, the 29th of September. 2 days before, Charles de Blois had arrived east of the Abbey of Lanvaux. Bertrand de Guesclin, who commanded the vanguard of the French troops, was in nearby Brandivy. On the 28th of September, de Guesclin landed on the left bank of the river and took up position before the castle. To avoid being caught between the castle and the French army, Montfort evacuated Auray and took a position facing the enemy on the slope of the right bank of the river. On the 29th of September, attempts at agreement having failed, Charles de Blois prepared for the attack. His army crossed the river and lined up facing south, considered a bad position by some of its commanders because it was on a marshy plain north of the town and castle. Montfort followed the movement and lined up facing north in a more dominating position. Rejecting the advice of de Guesclin, Charles of Blois then ordered the attack against Montfort's forces. The battle began with a short skirmish between the French arbalesters and the English archers. Then the men-at-arms engaged directly without seeking to manoeuvre. It was a bloody combat, because all wanted this battle to be decisive and to put an end to the long and cruel war. Moreover, orders were given on both sides not to give quarter to captives. Each Anglo-Breton corps was attacked head-on, one after the other, but the reserves restored the situation. Then the right wing of the Franco-Breton position was counter-attacked and driven back. Not being supported by its own reserves, was folded up towards the centre. The left wing then folded in turn. The Count of Auxerre was captured and the troops of Charles de Blois broke and fled. Charles, having been struck down by a lance, was finished off by an English soldier, obeying orders to show no quarter. De Guesclin, having broken all his weapons, was obliged to surrender to the English commander Chandos. De Guesclin was taken into custody and ransomed by Charles V for 100,000 francs. The battle marked the end of this long conflict. Charles of Blois was killed, and Joan of Penthriver, finding herself a widow, saw her cause collapse.